Chef Marcus Mac Chen stared at the bubbling pot of what was allegedly beef stew with the kind of resigned determination usually reserved for bomb disposal technicians. The military-issue survival ration proudly stamped with an expiration date, sometime after the heat death of the universe glumly bubbled back at him. "Come on, you pre-packaged abomination," he muttered, adding a pinch of his contraband earth spices. "Even the Zorblaxians have better food than this, and they photosynthesize." The kitchen of Earth's first interstellar embassy was exactly what you'd expect when humans were given the task of merging terrestrial cooking equipment with alien technology they barely understood. The result was a chaotic maze of traditional gas burners next to quantum heating coils, and at least 3 devices that Mac was pretty sure were either food processors or small particle accelerators. The distinction had caused some interesting incidents. Chef Chen Ambassador Thompson's voice boomed through the kitchen, causing Mac to nearly drop his experimental spice blend into what he'd privately labeled Attempt 47 at making Marez edible wonderful news. Mac turned to face the ambassador, a man whose enthusiasm for interstellar diplomacy was matched only by his complete inability to read any form of bureaucratic paperwork correctly. "Sir, if this is about the incident with the levitating spaghetti, I can explain." Even better, Thompson waved a holographic document that shifted colors like an oil slick. "I've just registered you for the Grand Galactic Culinary Championship." The spice shaker hit the floor with a sad little puff of paprika. "You? What?" "Well, we received this form about representing Earth's finest culinary achievements, and naturally, I thought of you. You're always in here, experimenting with our traditional military cuisine." Mac felt his soul trying to escape through his ears. "Sir, with all due respect, those forms were probably for the Interstellar Food Safety Commission. You know, the ones who wanted to verify our food wouldn't accidentally create black holes in alien digestive systems." "Nonsense," Thompson beamed, completely immune to Mac's growing horror. "I've already submitted your credentials. They were particularly impressed by your innovative preservation techniques. The competition starts tomorrow on Alpha Centauri. Isn't that exciting?" Tomorrow, Mac's voice hit a pitch previously only achieved by quantum physics experiments. "Sir, I haven't prepared anything. I've been trying to make military rations taste like actual food, not competing with the galaxy's finest chefs." "That's the spirit. Show them the ingenuity of Earth's military cuisine." Thompson clapped him on the shoulder. "Your transport leaves in 3 hours. I took the liberty of having your kitchen packed up." My Kitchmac spun around to find most of his equipment already gone, replaced by neat shipping labels. The only things left were his personal collection of modified Marez and the still bubbling pot of experimental beef stew. "Oh, and one more thing," Thompson added, already backing toward the door with the practiced ease of someone about to deliver more bad news. "The competition runs for 3 days, and Earth's reputation for joining the galactic community rests entirely on your performance. No pressure." The door whooshed shut, leaving Mac alone with his bubbling pot and the crushing weight of representing humanity's culinary arts with nothing but enhanced military rations. He looked at the beef stew, which had now achieved a consistency somewhere between concrete and regret. "Well," he sighed, reaching for a container to pack up his failed experiment, "at least it can't get any worse than serving Marez to the galaxy's top food critics." The universe, as it typically does when such statements are made, took this as a personal challenge. The Centauri Culinary Academy looked like someone had asked a hyperactive child to design a wedding cake, then gave them unlimited resources and a complete disregard for physics. Crystalline spires twisted impossibly upward, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of solidified rainbow light. Mac's transport pod descended toward a landing pad that appeared to be floating on nothing but optimism and quantum mechanics. "Welcome," Earth Representative Chen chirped his AI guide, a floating orb that had introduced itself as Dish Digital Interstellar Service Host. "You're just in time for the opening ceremonies, though I must say, your baggage seems rather minimal." Mac clutched his duffel bag of Marez closer, trying not to look at the other competitors arriving with entire cargo ships of ingredients. "Yeah, there was a slight miscommunication about the date." Oh dear, Dish's cheerful blue glow flickered momentarily to a concerned purple. "Well, I'm sure a chef of your caliber has everything under control. Let me show you to the competitors' hall." The inside of the academy was even more impressive than the exterior, with kitchens that would make molecular gastronomists weep with joy. Chefs from across the galaxy were setting up their stations, each more alien than the last. Mac watched as a cloud of sentient gas carefully arranged what appeared to be solid light into geometric patterns. Ah, what if we hear a voice like silk being dragged across velvet made Mac turn? The human competitor, I presume. The speaker was Chef Zyx'tal of the Gastropod Empire, current favorite to win the championship. Picture a 7-foot-tall snail with iridescent shells, wearing a chef's hat at a jaunty angle, and you're only scratching the surface of how ridiculous and somehow intimidating they looked. That's me, Mac managed, trying not to stare at the trail of gleaming slime that somehow spelled out Zyx'tal's previous cooking achievements as they moved. Just bringing Earth's finest. Zyx'tal's eye stalk swiveled to examine Mac's duffel bag. Fascinating. I myself have brought only 3 cargo ships of ingredients. One must be prepared, yes, though I'm sure your minimalist approach will be quite quaint. Before Mac could respond with what would have definitely been a witty comeback, and not at all awkward stammering, a crystalline chime rang through the hall. The judges had arrived. First came Judge Prisma. A being that looked like a living diamond had decided to take up food criticism. Their faceted surface reflected light in ways that hurt Mac's eyes to look at directly. I taste through chromatic resonance, they announced to the assembled chefs. Show me colors I have never seen. The second judge wasn't so much a single entity as a dozen identical humanoids moving in perfect sync, the hivemind of taste, apparently. We experience flavor as one, they spoke in perfect harmony. Impress all of us, or impress none of us. But it was the third judge that made Mac's military-grade beef stew turn uncomfortably in his stomach. Judge Ethereal floated 3 feet off the ground, a swirling vortex of energy that occasionally took humanoid form. I consume only the essence of food, it whispered in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The physical form is merely a vessel for true taste. And now Dish announced cheerfully, completely oblivious to the existential crisis Mac was having. All competitors, please proceed to your assigned kitchens to unpack and prepare for tomorrow's first challenge. Mac's assigned kitchen was state-of-the-art, with equipment he couldn't even begin to name. He slowly unpacked his duffel bag, arranging his collection of modified maras with the same care someone might arrange their own funeral. Excuse me, he called to Dish, who was hovering nearby. Is there any chance I could get access to the Academy's ingredient storage? Oh, I'm so sorry, Dish actually managed to sound genuinely apologetic. All competitors must use only their brought ingredients. It's in the rules you signed. The rules I signed? Mac's voice cracked. You mean the rules Ambassador Thompson signed? Indeed. Section 47, subsection Q. All ingredients must be transported by the competitor. As proof of their world's culinary heritage, your ambassador was most insistent that your preserved military rations represented Earth's finest achievement in food science. Mac looked at his collection of anomalies, then at the other kitchens where chefs were unpacking ingredients that defied physics, biology, and several other branches of science. Chef Zyx'tal alone was setting up what appeared to be a garden of crystalline vegetables that chimed when touched. Well, he muttered to himself, picking up his experimental beef stew MRA. At least these things are technically edible. According to most laws of physics, anyway. A small explosion from the gas cloud chef station sent rainbows cascading across the ceiling. Dish's cheerful voice piped up, "Oh, how exciting. This year's competition is already off to a colorful start." Mac had never related more to a military ration in his life. They were both way out of their depth, and probably shouldn't be consumed by anyone with taste buds. The theme for our first challenge is traditional sustenance. Dish announced with its characteristic enthusiasm. Each chef will present a dish that represents their civilization's approach to fundamental nutrition. Mac watched in mounting horror as his competitors began creating culinary masterpieces. Chef Zyx'tal was somehow conducting an orchestra of floating utensils, each one precisely cutting impossibly delicate crystalline vegetables that changed flavor based on the music being played. The gaseous chef had condensed themselves into a living flame, personally searing what looked like quantum-locked proteins. 10 minutes remaining, Dish chimed. Mac stared at his improved beef stew MRE, which he'd been desperately trying to reconstitute into something that wouldn't violate interstellar peace treaties. He'd added his special blend of spices, actually heated it to the recommended temperature of first in military history, and even arranged it in a bowl that didn't have camouflage patterns. "This is it," he muttered, stirring the stew one last time. "I'm about to end humanity's diplomatic relations with a bowl of beef-adjacent sustenance." Time's up. Presenters, please bring your dishes to the judging table. Chef Zyx'tal went first, gliding forward with their musical meal. "I present Symphony of Sustenance, a harmonious blend of crystal-grown vegetables, each note corresponding to a different nutritional requirement of our species." The judges were suitably impressed. Prisma sparkled with new colors, the hivemind hummed in 12-part harmony, and Judge Ethereal briefly condensed into a standing ovation. After several more presentations, including what Mac was pretty sure was a small solar system made of soup, it was his turn. "And now," Dish announced, "Earth's representative will present their traditional sustenance." Mac stepped forward, holding his bowl of stew like it might explode. Given some of the chemical preservatives involved, this wasn't entirely impossible. "I present military-issue beef stew, enhanced formula." He tried to sound confident. "A traditional meal designed to sustain our warriors in any condition, preserved through advanced chemical processes to remain edible for decades." There was a moment of absolute silence. Decades. Judge Prisma's crystalline structure shifted in what might have been surprise. "You're suggesting this food doesn't decay?" "Well, technically it does, but not for about 50 years. Give or take nuclear winter." Mac was babbling now. "It's designed to survive extreme conditions while maintaining minimum nutritional standards. I've improved the flavor profile with." Fascinating. The hive mind suddenly surged forward, all 12 bodies leaning in to examine the stew. "Food that defies temporal degradation. How is this achieved?" Various preservation methods. Dehydration, chemical stabilizers, some stuff I'm pretty sure was invented by scientists who lost a bet." Mac watched in bewilderment as Judge Ethereal actually manifested a physical form to peer at his MRE. "The essence, the energy being whispered, it's locked in stasis, neither degrading nor evolving. A quantum state of sustained edibility. We have never encountered such technology." Chef Zyx'tal's eye stalks were practically tied in knots. "Surely you jest. Food that lasts for decades, without temporal stasis fields or psychic suspension." "Standard issue," Mac confirmed, starting to realize something incredible. "Wait, you're saying the galaxy doesn't have preserved food?" "Preservation beyond a few days requires massive energy expenditure or complex stasis technology," Prisma explained, their surface reflecting patterns Mac had never seen before. "The power required to maintain a stasis field for even a small meal could power a small city." The hive mind was now passing the stew between all 12 bodies, each one analyzing it from a different angle. The chemical matrix is ingenious, crude yet unimaginably effective. "Please," Judge Ethereal's voice resonated with genuine curiosity, "demonstrate how one prepares this miracle of preservation." Mac found himself walking the judges through the sacred military ritual of emery preparation. The addition of water, the chemical heating element, the careful mixing to ensure even rehydration. The entire assembly watched in rapt attention as if he was performing complex surgery rather than making what was essentially space-age camping food. "And now, your honors, it's ready to eat." Mac held his breath as each judge sampled the stew. Prisma's surface exploded into colors Mac was pretty sure hadn't existed before. The hive mind went into a synchronized tasting routine that looked like a choreographed dance. Judge Ethereal actually became solid enough to hold a spoon properly. "The flavor is unique," Prisma announced, still shimmering with new colors. "But the preservation technology, this could revolutionize galactic food distribution." "Through all our advancement," the hive mind spoke in chorus, "we never considered such elegant simplicity. No power requirements, no technology needed for storage." "You have shown us something truly new," Judge Ethereal concluded. "Perhaps Earth's military cuisine holds more surprises." Mac looked at his remaining malres, each one a different experiment in making the indestructible slightly more palatable. For the first time since arriving, he smiled. "Oh," he said, thinking of his spice-enhanced chicken tetraxenium MRE, "you haven't seen anything yet. and for the sustainable energy round, Mac announced, holding up what looked like a radioactive brick. I present the chili Mac MRA, enhanced with my special blend of earth spices. The judges had long since stopped questioning the strange chemical reactions that occurred when Mac prepared his meals. Judge Prisma had developed entirely new facets just to process the colors they were experiencing. The hivemind had taken to performing synchronized taste testing ballet. Even Judge Ethereal had maintained a semi-solid form, claiming the preservatives helped with dimensional stability. In the audience, Chef Zyx'tal's eye stalks twitched violently. Impossible. He's advancing through every round with preserved food. The other competitors were similarly agitated. The gaseous chef had condensed into what appeared to be stress-induced acid rain. A quantum chef from the Helix Nebula had accidentally created a small temporal paradox, trying to understand how Mac's food worked. The preservation matrix is particularly robust in this variation, the hivemind announced after tasting. We detect at least 17 distinct chemical processes working in harmony. Actually, that's just the cheese powder, Mac admitted. We're still not sure if it's technically cheese or a new form of matter. The Galactic media was having a field day. Holographic headlines floated everywhere. Human preservation master revolutionizes food storage. Earth's military cuisine crude yet brilliant. Top 10 things you didn't know about anomalies. Number 7 will destabilize your molecular structure. Back in his kitchen, Mac was arranging his remaining anomalies when he heard a suspicious slithering sound. Looking for something, Chef Zyx'tal, he asked without turning around. Merely observing your technique, the gastropod chef oozed closer. Surely there must be more to it than adding water to preserved powder. The secret's in the chemical heating element, Mac explained, knowing full well that Zyx'tal had been trying to sabotage him for days. Yesterday, his quantum heating unit had mysteriously recalibrated itself to surface of the sun. The day before, all his spoons had achieved sentience and tried to unionize. Ah, yes, the mysterious powder. Zyx'tal's eye stalks focused on an open MRA packet on Mac's counter. Perhaps just a small sample for cultural exchange. I wouldn't. Mac started, but Zyx'tal had already extended a specialized tasting tentacle toward the raw MRA powder. The following sequence of events would later be described by Dish as a fascinating demonstration of cross-species chemical reactions. Zyx'tal's normally iridescent shells cycled through colors not seen since the early universe. Their eye stalks tied themselves in actual knots. The slime trail behind them started spelling out error messages in 17 different languages. What manner of chemical warfare is this? Zyx'tal managed to gasp before slithering at high speed toward the nearest medical station. I tried to warn you, Mac called after them. The chicken tetrazzini needs to be rehydrated first, and maybe checked for violations of the Geneva Convention. The incident only added to Mac's growing reputation. Speculation ran wild about Earth's military-grade preservation technology. Some suggested humans had evolved with specialized digestive systems just to handle MRAs. Others theorized that Earth's military cuisine was actually a cleverly disguised form of chemical warfare. Chef Chen Dish buzzed excitedly around his kitchen. You've received 14 offers for exclusive rights to your preservation technology, 8 marriage proposals from various energy beings, and 1 inquiry about whether MRAs could be used as alternative fuel sources. Mac looked at his dwindling supply of modified rations. He was down to his last few experiments, the questionably enhanced hamburger, something that claimed to be Mediterranean lamb stew, and his piece de resistance, a dessert MRA he'd spent months perfecting. Tell them the technology isn't for sale, he said, carefully arranging his remaining meals. Some things are too powerful for the galaxy to handle. As if to prove his point, a distant explosion echoed through the academy, followed by Dish's cheerful announcement. Attention all competitors. The quantum chef's attempt to reverse engineer Earth preservation techniques has resulted in a small temporal anomaly. Please avoid the West Wing for the next several centuries. The final round was approaching, and Mac had saved his most ambitious creation for last. He patted the dessert emmer packet thoughtfully. If the judges were impressed by regular military rations, wait until they tried his improved version of cobbler. From the medical bay came the sound of Zyx'tal discovering the second phase of MRE-related distress, followed by what might have been cursing in ancient Gastropodian. Should we inform Chef Zyx'tal that the symptoms include temporary chromatic disruption? Dish inquired. Nah, Mac grinned, watching the gastropod chef's shell continue to strobe like a malfunctioning disco ball. Consider it a preview of my final presentation's light show. As he prepared for the final round, Mac couldn't help but appreciate the irony. He'd spent years trying to make military rations more like regular food, only to discover that their very indestructibility was their greatest strength. Sometimes, he mused, watching another competitor's attempt at preservation create a small quantum singularity, humanity's crude solutions were the best ones. Besides, he thought with a grin, watching Judge Ethereal try to explain Earth's chemical preservation techniques to a bewildered audience. At least nobody had asked him about the vegetarian omelet MRE yet. Some horrors were too great even for an interstellar cooking competition. The final round of the Grand Galactic Culinary Championship had drawn a crowd that defied several laws of physics. Beings of all dimensions packed the Academy's Grand Hall, some existing in multiple states simultaneously just to get a better view. The theme for our final round dish, announced with enough enthusiasm to power a small star, is innovation in culinary arts. Chefs must present a complete three-course meal that pushes the boundaries of gastronomy. Mac surveyed his remaining mares with the calculating eye of a battlefield strategist. Time to show them what Earth's military-industrial complex can really do. At the neighboring station, Chef Zyx'tal was still slightly phosphorescent from their earlier mare mishap. You cannot possibly create fine dining from preserved combat rations. Watch me, Mac replied, already reaching for his first course, the surprisingly complex chicken noodle soup, mare heat enhanced with actual spices and what might have been real chicken. The kitchen erupted into controlled chaos. Chef Zyx'tal was conducting an entire quantum orchestra to prepare their dish. The gaseous chef had split into 3 different elemental states. Someone in the back appeared to be wrestling with the concept of time itself to properly age their cheese. Mac worked with military precision, carefully timing each mare's preparation. The chemical heating elements activated in sequence, creating a symphony of questionably safe exothermic reactions. First course dish called out. Mac presented his enhanced chicken noodle soup, garnished with what he swore were actual vegetables, a traditional Earth remedy, preserved through advanced chemical processes and enhanced with temporal stabilizers, which might just be MSG. Judge Prisma took one taste and immediately developed 3 new crystal facets. The sodium content. It's creating flavor wavelengths I've never experienced. The hivemind's 12 bodies began a complex tasting ritual that somehow involved differential equations. The preservation matrix is interfacing with our collective consciousness in unprecedented ways. Judge Ethereal had to take a moment to reform after their first spoonful. The essence. It transcends traditional molecular bonds. For the main course, Mac unveiled his masterpiece, the legendary beef stroganoff MRE, modified with his secret blend of spices and what the original ingredients list described as meat-adjacent protein structures. Notice the complex interplay of preservatives, he explained, warming to his role as a culinary innovator. The sauce maintains its consistency through what we believe is a localized suspension of certain physical laws. The hivemind took one bite and immediately got caught in a recursive flavor loop. All 12 bodies began moving in perfect circles, chanting what appeared to be the chemical formula for artificial beef flavoring. Judge Prisma's surface was displaying colors that made other crystalline beings in the audience start to vibrate in sympathy. The chromatic resonance. It's redefining our understanding of the visible spectrum. But it was the dessert course that truly broke reality. Mac had spent months perfecting his enhanced apple cinnamon cobbler MRE, carefully balancing the chemical preservatives with actual food ingredients until it achieved a state that military scientists had termed paradoxically edible. I present, he announced with a flourish, what we call Schrodinger's dessert, a cobbler that exists simultaneously in all states of freshness until observed. Judge Ethereal took one bite and suddenly became fully corporeal, dropping to the floor with a very solid thud. By the cosmic constants, the preservation matrix, it's stabilizing my quantum fluctuations. The hivemind, still recovering from their flavor loop, approached the dessert cautiously. The moment all 12 bodies tasted it simultaneously, they achieved perfect synchronization, something that hadn't happened since their species evolved consciousness. Judge Prisma's surface had begun displaying colors that technically couldn't exist in this dimension. The flavor profile. It's creating synthetic synesthetic responses. I can taste the color of time. The audience watched in amazed horror as Mac's dessert defied increasingly fundamental laws of physics. Several theoretic physicists in attendance had to be escorted out when they realized the preservation techniques violated their life's work. Chef Zyx'tal's final dish, a symphony of quantum entangled flavors, went largely unnoticed as the judges were still trying to process the existence of Mac's three-course assault on reality. The stabilizing compounds Judge Ethereal managed to say, still surprisingly solid, they've temporarily anchored my form to this dimension. Do you realize what this means for energy beings everywhere? Honestly, Mac admitted, I just wanted it to taste better than the standard issue version. The hive mind had finally broken free of their recursive loop, though all 12 bodies were now humming the chemical formula for artificial apple flavoring. The preservation technology, it could revolutionize food storage across the galaxy. But it's just standard military food, Mac protested weakly as Judge Prisma began displaying colors that were making some audience members achieve enlightenment. Standard Chef Zyx'tal's eye stalks waved in disbelief. You've created substances that defy entropy, flavors that transcend dimensional boundaries, and preservation techniques that can stabilize quantum states. Mac looked at his humble collection of modified maraes. He'd spent so long trying to make them taste more normal. He'd never considered that their very abnormality might be their greatest strength. I suppose, he said thoughtfully, watching Judge Ethereal experiment with their newly solid form by doing jumping jacks. This explains why the military never complained about my improvements to the recipes. The hive mind, now moving in perfect hexagonal formations, raised all 24 hands for attention. We have reached a unanimous decision, though we may never achieve non-synchronization again. The entire hall held its breath, creating a slight vacuum that threatened to decompress the chamber. Dish, practically vibrating with excitement, prepared to announce the winner of the Grand Galactic Culinary Championship, while somewhere in the background, a temporal anomaly caused by Mac's dessert was turning the west wing of the Academy into a quantum superposition of past and future architecture. The winner of the Grand Galactic Culinary Championship. Dish announced, its cheerful voice somehow reaching across 17 dimensions simultaneously, is Earth's Chef Marcus Mac Chen, for revolutionizing the very concept of food preservation. The applause broke several local physics ordinances. Judge Ethereal, still surprisingly solid, had to be talked down from attempting a backflip. The hive mind performed a perfectly synchronized victory dance that accidentally created a new form of mathematics. Judge Prisma's celebratory light show gave 3 audience members temporary omniscience. I don't understand, Mac said, accepting the trophy which appeared to be made of crystallized time. All I did was try to make military rations slightly more edible. You've done far more than that, Chef Zyx'tal admitted, their eye stalks finally unnodding. Your preservation technology will change everything, though I still can't feel my taste buds after that powder incident. Within weeks, Earth's military ration technology became the galaxy's most closely guarded culinary secret. The preservation techniques, previously considered a form of enlisted personnel endurance training, were now worth more than most planets' GDPs. Back at the Earth Embassy kitchen, Mac found himself drowning in interview requests, research proposals, and what appeared to be marriage proposals from various energy beings impressed by his ability to stabilize quantum states. Another call from the Gastropod Empire Ambassador Thompson announced, poking his head into the kitchen. They're offering 3 solar systems and a small nebula for the secret to your enhanced chicken tetrazzini. Mac was barely listening, focused on his latest experiment. That's nice, sir. But I think I've finally figured out how to make the vegetarian omelet MRA taste like actual food. Oh, that won't be necessary anymore, Thompson beamed. The military has decided to adopt advanced alien cooking techniques. They're replacing all omeras with quantum-stabilized gourmet meals. Apparently, they're cheaper than manufacturing all those preservation chemicals. Mac looked at his collection of modified rations, then at the new quantum food replicator being installed in the corner. He couldn't help but laugh at the irony he'd spent years trying to make military rations more palatable, only to have them become obsolete the moment they were recognized as genius. "Well," he said, picking up his last experimental MRA, "I suppose I should be happy. No more soldiers will have to experience the character-building trauma of the cheese spread." "Oh, and one more thing," Thompson added with a suspiciously familiar gleam in his eye. "I've signed you up for next year's championship. The theme is traditional Earth cuisine. I thought you could show them our MRA technology's final form." Sir Max said slowly, "We won't be using MRAs anymore. They're being replaced, remember?" "Exactly. They're now officially traditional. Isn't bureaucracy wonderful?" As Thompson left, humming happily, Max stared at his last remaining experimental ration. Somewhere in the galaxy, beings of pure energy were becoming solid just to taste his preserved food. Quantum physicists were rewriting theories based on his desserts. The hivemind was probably still stuck in a flavor loop. And here he was, about to compete again, this time with actual traditional Earth cuisine. He couldn't help but wonder what the judges would make of real human food after experiencing the reality-bending properties of military rations. "Well," he muttered, placing his final MRA in a display case labeled "in case of temporal emergency. Break glass. At least this time I can't accidentally revolutionize galactic cuisine." The universe, ever the optimist, began plotting once again.